Your latest news update from Western Mass News.
Good Tuesday afternoon. I'm Chris Pisano with a look at your headlines. Just yesterday, the January 6th committee handed out criminal referrals for former President Donald Trump. Professor of history at Western New England University, John Back, says the decision of the January 6th committee will go down in history. He says a criminal referral is not a formal charge, but a strong suggestion to the Department of Justice to prosecute former President Trump on these charges. Back says it's unlikely the DOJ will pursue all 4 charges, but it is likely they'll choose 1 or 2 to try to prosecute. A Feeding Hills house is a total loss after a fire just days before Christmas. Firefighters were called to the scene around 4:45 Tuesday morning. When they arrived, flames were already shooting out of every window of the structure. The response grew to 2 alarms, with Agawam Fire receiving assistance from Springfield, Westfield, and Longmeadow. 1 person was transported to an area hospital for smoke inhalation. The cause of the fire is under investigation. And Mary Lou Sutters, who oversaw the state's COVID-19 response efforts, plans to retire from public service early next year. Sutters began her state service in 1978 and became the Secretary of Health and Human Services in 2015. She announced her retirement in her monthly newsletter with an effective date of January 5th. She is the longest-serving Secretary of Health and Human Services.
I'm meteorologist Jana Brown. The check of your forecast. We've got clear skies on tap for tonight, and with high pressure building in overhead, wind becomes light to calm. That's going to allow temperatures to drop very fast this evening. Our overnight lows will plummet down into the lower and middle teens by sunrise. Quite a bit of frost expected for tomorrow morning. And then we've got another mostly sunny day on tap with a few high thin clouds. Breezes will stay light to calm throughout the day, and temperatures fairly close to normal again as we return to the middle and upper 30s for the valley, and we'll see some middle 30s getting into the hill towns. Now, we are tracking this powerful storm system for the end of the week. We're going to watch it move into the Midwest on Thursday, and then Thursday afternoon and evening, rain will get started for New England. That rain becomes heavy at times, even Thursday night, and then again during the day Friday. A powerful cold front will come in Friday evening, and we'll see a very sharp temperature drop. It's also going to be incredibly blustery, too, especially on Friday, as wind could gust as high as 50 miles an hour. We're expecting at least 1 to 2 inches of rain. We do dry out, but get much colder for the holiday weekend, staying blustery with highs in the 20s both Saturday and Christmas Day.
Stay with Western Mass News on air, online, and on our app throughout the day for breaking news, weather, and exclusive content.